Is this on? Ah, wow, God, this is loud. Hello. Hey, that's right. I was originally going to be on last, but someone bumped me because there's a panel. So that's really weird, just being able to see the bald spot on the back of your head. Anyway, moving on. Hi, so my name's Pete Draper. I've never used this thing before. I normally have an iPhone because design. See how I did that? Yes, it works. I don't know how you go back. There you go, right, fine. So I'm the co-founder, division head, and chief technical director. Big, long title. Basically, I didn't want to be called CEO. That's it in a nutshell. And as a result, we've been running as a studio here in Hyderabad for 9.5 years. So I've been here in India now for just over 10. We're coming up to my 11th anniversary. Came here single. It was a hook and bait. You got me married. Now I'm stuck. Thanks. Last time I went back to England, for those of you who have come across over there, the word Brexit didn't exist. So I go away for 5 minutes, I swear to God. Anyway, this is what we do. So that's the day job. Thank you. Mostly in this, my predecessor was talking about team members, so we were around about 60. We ramp up to around about 120 when we're at peak, like for example during Barbly time, and also some elements within Sire, etc., which I'll show you later on. So what I want to talk to you about is the design work that we actually went through during the second Barbly film. So hands up who's seen this film. All right, hands up who's not seen this film, Barbly 2. Okay, number one, why? Number two, spoilers. Okay, so the general design work, every single shot and every single element that we go through is basically going broad strokes, then refinement. Okay, so we're kind of starting big, we're working small. So one of the quickest and easiest things for us to go on is doing things in 2D. So it's a rough matte paint or concept artwork to initially start. So you'll see a couple of versions here. So you'll notice these guys here are exactly the same as those guys over there, cut, paste. But it was used for two separate shots later on in the sequence. So this is one that was originally designed to introduce the Kantala kingdom, which is obviously Devasena's palace, etc. This actually led originally onto another scene that actually got cut from the film just because of length. So we actually had a scene down there inside that palace at the base behind the gates where Kamala Varma's explaining as to the reason why all the army is down there because the back mountains are so impenetrable. That design was actually integral to the actual plot. So we had to build those elements in so that the plot could progress accordingly. Got cut around about after 80% of the work had already been done. You have no idea how much that is a stab in the heart. We did it, it looks awesome, you're never gonna see it. We got paid for it though, so that's okay. So this design itself actually leads us on to actually creating this particular shot, the initial lead in. So we blocked everything out in what's called previs, worked out the camera action work, planned all that, directed it directly on set. We shot this thing in like 15 minutes in between another scene, but the actual post work for this was like 5 months, just for this one shot, okay? So this is the thing with visual effects. You know, whatever you think, oh, that was quick, it looked great, it looked bad, it takes a long, long time. And generally, with any type of creativity, time equals quality equals money. So you put the time in, you put the quality in, you get the result, you get the decent result out at the end of it. The Kantala Kingdom itself actually went through several design iterations based on the fact that we actually shifted location. Originally, we were going to shoot this at Ramoji Film City, but we actually ended up shooting at a disused aluminium factory and built the set there. The design itself was actually driven by twofold. One was actually through the art director. You'll see him on the screen over there on the right in the red shirt, a guy called Sabu Cyril, who's like a national award-winning art director, amazing guy, lives 2 floors down from me, so we bounce ideas a lot, really, really, really great. And he also brings a bottle of whiskey around whenever he visits. 16-year single malt, thank you very much. So these small, intricate designs are very, very integral to the actual script itself and the story. However, they are so detailed. All these little things over here, these little cornices and the compositions, etc. So intricate detail. We've got to replicate exactly that in CG, and unlike the Mahishmati environment, which we had 1 year to build, we had 2 months to build this. So how on earth do we populate this and the rest of the kingdom? And the idea was that we actually do it exactly how they built this on set. They built the entire set in 2 months. And the reason why they built it in 2 months, the method that they used, is a lot of replication. So if you look, there's a lot of repetitive elements going on. This entire section here at the front is replicated all the way down, and that's multiple molds that are going on all the way through. It looks busy, it looks detailed, but in essence, it's a lot of copy-paste. So we do exactly the same thing in CG, which is giving us the ability to work out the designs and scan the elements and to figure out exactly where everything should go. So the first thing we do what's called a LiDAR scan. That in essence is taking a big industrial piece of equipment, shoots the laser out, hits something, comes back, and that determines the distance from the scanner to that particular point. You do that enough times, you get a point cloud. Forgive me if I'm speaking gibberish. Also forgive me if you know what I'm talking about and I'm preaching to the choir. From that information, we can generate geometry and know exactly where everything is, so we can just build up directly on top of the live set. So we're not guessing, we're not going out with tape measures or rangefinders and all this stuff. We know where everything needs to go. This badly compressed video on the left-hand side here is actually an app and a design that we built so we can log all the information that we need for every single shot on set, of which there are thousands. So every single shot has to have its recursive media. Every single take is logged, what the camera is doing for every single shot, depending on what the editor decides to use. So all this is collated together and has to be fast input, very, 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 very quick. So it was designed so that one could flick through this and collapse areas when we don't need it. Just a standard traffic light system. Green is done, amber, something's missing, red, you've got a lot of work to do. So the final result for this particular kingdom itself is a basic set extension, a lot of repetition going on. However, it's going down to the fine levels. So once you've broken all this up, you get this natural extension going on. So once you'll be able to see the breakthrough for here. So we're taking these live design elements from the set itself, replicating that digitally, replicating the materials, replicating the transmission of light through every single object. And because this is vinyl, we have to replicate vinyl, not marble. Same deal with trees, same deal with tree placements, working out exactly what type of foliage is actually going in there and getting a natural distribution therein as well, which is not only going to just work for this shot, but a lot of other subsequent shots. Basically building a virtual set that you can shoot at multiple angles. In some cases, these things work out very well. In some cases, they completely and utterly are a nightmare. This was originally a shot that was going to be just a little push forward, but the director wanted us to shift the camera so far back that we had to build a complete digital version of the set, and then some poor guy had to work out exactly where all the live individual guys were and create a digital version of every single one in every single costume in every single color to match it, so when we transition through, it worked perfectly. Now I'm going to play this again one time. All right, can you work out where the transition is? It should be quite easy, to be honest, because I've just showed you. But there is also a fault. There is what we call a movie mistake. I hate that word. Oh, it's a movie mistake. Yes, this time it is. But somebody actually did on the first film, someone actually worked out the physics for PRabhas jumping from one side of the mountain from the other side and worked out that he would die. We know. The film would only be 10 minutes long. It kind of like, dead. Okay, the end. So the movie mistake actually is there is a grill there behind her head. Off camera here, next to his, on frame left, the grill has not been put back in because we ran out of time. There's actually a rig that's behind there, which is a wire. We didn't get a chance to paint it back in, so that's the mistake. This is another mistake. This is something that we shot at 2 o'clock in the morning that originally was supposed to ramp. The camera needed to go really, really fast down to the end. All these guys getting hit by arrows, falling off, boom, 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 all the way down, dead. Great. So we ramped the shot, and it's working okay. But the problem is all the guys are running normal speed. Now, the problem with that is the director wanted actual speed of arrows traveling, but time sliced. So all the guys needed to be like this. And then, all this kind of stuff. An arrow travels at about 300 kilometers per hour. So if you're actually ramping that down, your shot is done. That's it. So we needed to extend the shot, retime it, but we had all these guys in there already, and they would look like they're running really fast, really, comically. So we had to replace the guys. So, right, what to do? So thankfully, we actually had some digital doubles that we could put in there. Okay, that's right, fine. But then we had to extend the set, and then when we ramped it, the camera's doing all this because there are, I'm just going to play this one time, if we can. Beep. You see the shake? That's at 96 frames per second this has been shot at. So what's happening is you have 3 guys operating that camera. One guy's pushing it, another guy is holding the weight on the back to make sure it doesn't tip over. It's on a 30-foot arm on a camera, so everything's kind of doing this, and then you've got another guy with a joystick like that, trying to make sure the frame is shot, is nice and flat, while this thing has been hurtling down the end, and the guy on the trolley is trying not to push it off the end so 60 lakhs worth of equipment doesn't get destroyed. Okay? And we did it 9 times. So when it came to it, we realized it's not going to work. So thankfully, because of the elements that we'd already built, we had half of the model already done, so we ended up doing a complete CG shot. So the entire thing was fully digital in the end. So what was originally going to be what we estimated as a 2-week work, this actually became a 3-month to 4-month job, just for that shot itself. By the end of it, a lot of the assets we could actually repurpose a lot. So I've brought these slides back up again on the left and right, because if you'll notice, this element on the right-hand side has actually been repurposed to this same element, which is actually in the dockyard. So we literally just created a trough, flooded it with water, and then used these elements to actually get the characters and the artists to interact with. So all of this here, bottom level here, this is live. Everything else back there is digital. All right, so we pretty much nailed the materials. All the top portion digital, all the guys at the top digital, backside there is, guys at the backside are, that entire top side and backside digital, through there is, that's live on the left, and so on and so on. So when we actually come to the big, right, this is a gag. She's actually walking just over a plank that we put behind him. She wouldn't be able to walk on his shoulders anyway, because his shoulders are totally screwed. By this time, he'd been fighting, and he'd knackered his rotator cuff. And so just doing that, he's like, oh, do the shot, please. So by the end of it, he's, oh, God, how many times do you have to walk across my head? Bless him. But the backside entire thing of that is obviously now digital. So from the dockyard, they travel on the Swan boat. And the Swan boat, fun fact, was the first thing that was designed for the first film. It actually became the last thing we ever filmed in the second film, and the last scenes that we as a studio worked on. So these initial design works, which were general shapes, which were provided by another studio called Firefly, who also are in Hyderabad, got passed across us for us to flesh out. So after various different designs of this entire Swan sail structure, I came to realize one thing. So I've not really seen any swans here in India. Maybe I've been in the south too long, but are there any swans like in the north or anywhere, or no? Has anyone seen a swan in real life? Put your hand up. Okay, right. So when a swan does its wings like this, what's it doing? It's not very happy. So this is an angry swan boat. We only realized the design until later on. Well, I only realized the design later on. And I told the director, and he's like, yeah, leave it where it is. So we ended up actually having an angry swan boat, not a graceful one. So this went through around about 4 or 5 iterations until they actually came to finalizing the model, which was this guy in the center. And then from that, we built the set. So this is the set for the song and for the traveling episode and so on. And when it flies, I don't know either, but anyway, moving on. So at that particular point in time, the design of the actual boat itself, you notice here at the front, the entire thing goes, instead of being curved, it goes straight as a die. So our entire model that we built at this particular point had to be adjusted. The entire thing had to be changed because of the limitations in the set build. They couldn't get that curve right. So we ended up having to tweak the model, and we had to do it overnight because this had to go across to another studio to do the flying episode while we were doing the traveling episode. So the actual final model, based on the concept, etc., came out like this. So this was actually the final shot. That was the element that we shot, the LiDAR scan, the resulting geometry, and the final there. Same deal for this side. You've got the live set over here. For any elements that we could physically film, which were incorporated into the CG shot. And there is a big design flaw. Can anybody spot what it is? Anyone? Put your hand up. You're doing this, you're raving? I don't know. Huh? Nope. Huh? Who said that? Yours, yeah? What? They don't have the end bit on them. They do. They're just underwater. This is the concept. But you were close. You were close. I'll give you a bronze. Gold star to my friend over there. They are all facing the wrong way. Well done. We only realized this 3 years later when we actually came to shoot it. The guys are all pushing. They're like, oh. No one will know. keep going. And that's what we did. For that one shot, all those guys are doing that. And we actually came to shooting this thing. We shot it for about 4 or 5 takes, and by which point the oars broke because they just absorbed so much water inside. We ended up having to drill holes in them. So number one, get the nice water flowing off. And the second reason was basically all of these stems were only just made out of fiber. So they broke straight away. Design flaw. So the final result is all these really heavy guys with big triceps pushing these oars to make the Swan boat travel for the journey to Maushmati. So into Maushmati itself, again, same principle as before, we go through concept. Every single one of these things have gone through concept artwork stages. All these key vistas, all these key designs have taken reference from locations that exist, and then block it out not only through concept work into pre-visualization. And you'll notice that right now the Swan boat is traveling like a speedboat. That obviously didn't work, so we had to either cut the sequence short or trim it down or trim the speed down. And the entire thing is just a visual metaphor. The entire thing, the entire scene, the build-up is just a visual metaphor for Maushmati crushing Kuntala. That's it. The entire build-up for it. So again, a little bit shaky, too much. The camera operator is drunk. You put this in, you put all this kind of handheld kind of thing in there to try and smooth out the edges. One of the problems that we had on this entire show was we love motion blur. We love depth of field because it really kind of has a nice organic feel to it that you have problems in CG replicating. The problem is on the show, the DP took the decision to shoot everything with a very shallow shutter angle. So everything is very sharp. When you're panning, you get very little motion blur. It looks like a Bourne Identity film. So there's no motion blur going on here because that is the design decision of the DP, which we're like, oh God. But it worked in the end. So going into Maushmati, one of the things that we actually did when it came to the second film is we redesigned our workflow process of how we were going to do the post-work on this. In the first film, we did what was called matte paint projection, which is basically taking a shot, getting the rough geometry render, painting over the top, and then shooting it. If there was an overlap, if there was a problem, we'd project from the final camera position, adjust that, stick a specular highlight pass out, and comp it together. Because all our matte paint guys were on other elements of the show, we had to go into standard 3D rendering, texture mapping, and shading and lighting, and so on. Now, that works very well for us because during the break between the film 1 and film 2, we did a couple of VR experiences with the production company Archimedia, and we had a lot of this already kind of pre-built. So that worked really well for us in the end of the day. The stuff that you've just seen, and the stuff that you've seen more than likely throughout the day, the technology that we use is very similar, if not the same. It's 3D software that's made by Autodesk or by Blender or by Softimage or Houdini and so on. So the actual technology we use is pretty much the same. It's just that we blow it up. That's the only primary difference. It's just end use is slightly different. The render engines that we throw out are pretty much the same as what a lot of this production work tends to utilize, especially the ad agency stuff that my predecessor mentioned. We've also done that sort of jobs. So like, we're doing virtual cars and virtual environments. We did one job for, unfortunately I can't say the brand, but it begins with a V. And we ended up having to actually track a vehicle that didn't, a live vehicle, and put a fake vehicle in there for a commercial. So same deal with regards to the city center. A lot of design elements were obviously incorporated from the first film. There was a lot of winding the history back 20 years so that we could obviously get that more cleanliness, more richness. We had more time to increase the quality of the visual effects that we had from the first film. Some of these shots, some of these assets that we built originally were not originally to be designed to be viewed this close up. Fun fact for the Barbly Netflix show that we're doing, But what I can say is we've actually taken this and we've taken this to the next stage and the next stage above it, purely because of the quality of that particular distributor requires. Really, really high detailed stuff. And yeah, a lot of late nights. Then we have the fun shots. This is the one that we lovingly called the Angry Birds sequence, because basically at this particular point in time in the production, we just wanted to destroy things. So it was one of these sequences that, okay, right, let's go to town on this thing. Let's really, really go as much crazy as we physically can. And by that, you need to watch it around about 5 or 6 times to take every single thing in. When we did the pre-visualization for this, we wanted to make sure the director went, "You're going to show me brains?" So these guys, poof, there, that was on. That was my input. It's like, I've got to kill these guys. We've been working on this thing for 4 years. We really, really, really need to break something. So we wanted to make this as much of a melee as possible, because the gag leading up to it was all of these guys going like boink on a catapult made out of a palm tree did not seem very scientifically accurate. So we wanted to make sure that war was brutal and also slightly inaccurate, because the director's like, "Oh, they'll just land. They'll just land on it." I'm like, no, they'll overshoot or they'll... So we have to make it as organic and as analog as physically possible. So this is what we call the Rampart run. This was actually designed, this entire sequence was designed by the fight coordinator, Lee Whitaker. And so we were actually only working with around about 120 feet set. So there's a consistent repeating design that's going on throughout this entire thing. But what we're doing is we're physically shifting digital props and redressing the set up and down to give the impression that we physically moved down the length, okay? So on the left, you'll see the raw stitch that we did. And the right is obviously the final output that went in there. So this was shot over the course of around about 5 days, by which point in time here, PRabhas' shoulder was totally gone. There's actually a scene shot here. If you notice, the guy on the left, he's holding a very small shield, and he's got the big one. We had to digitally replace that because he couldn't lift his arm over this particular height, okay? So, can anybody tell me what the biggest load of work was for this sequence? I'm going to run it again. What's the biggest load of work for this particular shot? Anybody tell me? Sorry? Nope. Next. You've watched this presentation before. Yes. So, the arrows, but why? Why the arrows? Like, you mean the clump of them was going? No. You were close with the word arrows, warm, but slightly afar. Anyone else? Huh? Direction? No. Timing? No. Sorry, one more? They should not be hitting PRabhas. That was through rehearsal. That was the live element. We are not worried about that. We're worried about the interesting stuff. Right. I'll play it one more time. You can see it mostly on this screen. You see all of those archers, all these guys at the back, every single one of those guys at the back, on this section, on this element here, there is no arrows, not one arrow. So not only did we have to track the camera to match it exactly, we had to physically track by hand every single soldier's hand action from here to here to here and release. Every single archer and work out their trajectory and fire the arrow. And this is all done by hand. There's no magic bullet, no press a button and it works it all out. Every single one of those guys was hand-tracked by an artist. That was 4 months' work just for the archers before we even got into the visual effects, the primary work of it. So, why didn't we just fire actual arrows? All those arrows are also added digitally to the quiver at the back as well. So why didn't we do them physically? Well, the arrow would literally hit the green mat and drop. It was just string and it's a prop, so chances are they pull it back and the bow would break. Or if it did fire, you'd ruin the green screen. So, visual effects is a combination of cost, practicality, and safety. That's the reason why I use visual effects. It was not practical for us to actually physically shoot every single arrow. It would cost a lot of money to replace the green screen. And also it wasn't safe, because one of these guys may bounce off and hit a guy who was hiding behind the wall. To the last part of the stage, again, spoilers, the statue goes down. In the first film, we managed to put the statue up. We designed that with the director and the art director. And by this particular point, we'd rendered and worked with this thing so often, we just wanted to destroy it. And the original idea was that the statue would come down and just crush the side corridor where Rana's dad is cowering. But we worked the distance, and it was actually coming around about a good 40 feet away. So by the director's, just smash it through, it'll be fine. No. We wanted to have this nice aerial shot to show the scale, this thing. But that would obviously establish the fact that this corridor is quite a distance away. So we had the idea on the set to, right, let's snap Rana's head off and use it as a bowling ball. And we can just smash it through something. So I said to Rana, okay, we're going to use your head as a bowling ball. And he was like, do it. So that was it. Again, that shot was filmed in maybe around about 20 minutes. The post-work took around about 3 months. All the original body dynamics work, the replication of the set, breaking it up, fragmentation, dust, simulations, etc., water simulations that are going on, fire mixing with water generating steam, layer comps, compositing, etc., etc. The entire shot took around about 4 or 5 months, the entire sequence itself. And the last one, did you see the head going glug, 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 glug? Gold does not go glug, 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 glug. And this is the reason. It's not gold, it's fiber. We actually ended up having to drill holes in Rana's face to get the air to come out so it would sink. Otherwise, it would just bob around like this. So we ended up having to cut big holes in the set model just to get it to drop down. Otherwise, that thing would still be floating today. Nice shot of Tammy. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of things that we just did recently. So one is a show called Syra, which got released last week. I'm showing this for 2 reasons, okay? Yay, Chiranjeevi. I'm showing this for 2 reasons. Now, I'm just going to wind back. We got a call to work with as we go over the hill, that was our shot, okay? Set extension work on the background, additional crowds, clean up, etc., additional mountains and so on, standard stuff that we do. 1 week before the film had to be delivered, we got a call. And that call was, we need a shot leading up to it. And that's the canyon down near Kerala. It's quite a famous location. I've been there personally, thankfully, for a show called Maradharmana, which was originally filmed from a few years back. And we had a drone shot, and that drone shot had to be stitched from another company's shot leading into this, and then going over the mountain into our shot. But the problem is that even after 3-4 months, they'd not managed to do the shot. So all we got was a few reference photographs and a drone footage that we managed to do photogrammetry from, reproject it, and rebuild the camera, and go out, shoot references, and do photogrammetry for hills to add into it. So we spent a week, day and night, doing it. And here's the fun fact. This bit at the beginning you see in the trailer. It was never shown in the final film. From here, you see it in the film. Okay? You plow over here. Now we're joining our shot with obviously all the additional crowd, the mandaps, etc., the new background, etc. And by now the shot's ended. So all this additional stuff here, we never saw. But we still did the work. And the reason why it got chopped was voiceover. Because of the artist giving the voiceover, I think it was like Kamal Hassan or Pavan Kalyan or something like that. The dialogue was actually not long enough, so they had to chop it and include it that way. But anyway, we got paid for it, so. So this is the original. This is what we had to work with, and obviously the two locations, well, the one location, a couple of reference photographs that I shot maybe 10 years ago. So we rebuilt that entire environment leading into this, and again, 1 week. A lot of late nights. We also released a show called Gang Leader, which came out around about 3-4 weeks back. So yeah, this last month has been quite busy for us. So you can see the original live plate over here, and these are the CG elements which obviously go into these things. We needed to get out of, the director wanted on the end of this tip, a small sharp object, which would cut the hero. But then we had a big fight with all of this thing, and he wanted this sharp object. So I don't have time. I had for this entire show, 4 weeks, that's it. So we compromised on set. On this shot and subsequent ones, this little drill bit on the end had been released. And it had been released on the impact when it hits the glass. So if you notice, when it comes under, it's there. When it comes to camera, clink, sharp object, cuts across him, goes to camera, goes away, hits, little tiny little thing spinning. Just to establish that this drill bit is now snapped off because this shot and the rest of it is with the prop. We also did a lot. We also shot up the at the stadium, the racetrack stadium up at Bunt, up in Delhi, up near Delhi, sorry. And we obviously couldn't get all full crowd, so we ended up doing a lot of volume capture, character animation work, and crowd replication work for not only for this shot but also for the previous shots as well. I'm not sure if I've got a clip of actually the original one. I might have. So you can see all the crowd in the background. So they are actually just fully digital. This was just one patch that was done. Timing this also using 1, 2, 3, 4, just designing it on set and working out his nice transitions so it actually comes through. That's actually 2 plates that we ended up using. One we shot there, one we shot in Hyderabad, and blended the 2 together, just using a verbal recording of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and running a trolley around doing it all very analog. In the UK and the US, we'd end up using motion control. That's very expensive, takes a lot of time to set up. This worked, we managed to do this in like 20 minutes, and then 20 minutes at the other location as well. And that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Pete. We have time for 2 questions.
No more elephants. Are there no more elephants, horses, or real folks on the sets anymore, except the actors, except the main actors?
We try and get as much in camera as we physically can. If we can get the crowd, we get the crowd. So we try and populate as much as close as possible to camera as physically possible, because as soon as you go digital or close up, you end up what's going into the area of the uncanny valley, which basically means that every single one of you is an expert in character animation. Every single one of you is an expert in computational fluid dynamics. You're also experts in volumes, whether you know it or not, because you see it every single day. So convincing somebody something's real or not, when you see it every single day, is very, very tough. Very, very hard to do. You know, anyone who's seen the Rogue One film remembers the Princess Leia, and everyone's like, ugh, Carrie Fisher's not done very well. So that, convincing the audience on that is a very, very hard thing to do. So getting digital crowd close to camera, very hard. When dealing with animals, you've obviously got Blue Cross. You can't get animals to do things which are, not practical to do, not safe, and that's inhumane. So you want to make sure that anything you do need to do, and you can control that environment, you try and get done digitally as best as possible.
One more question from me, man.
Hey.
Draper, terrific work. Terrific, I should say this, because as Mr. Pratap said, you were our dinner table discussion for almost few years with the movie Bahubali and Saira. So I would like to get your insight on one question, that how did you manage to coordinate with Mr. Rajamouli in the war room where you design and visualize these things?
Quite straightforward, really, believe it or not. And the reason being is that he has a general overview of, okay, start, middle, end. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. Specifically, down to visuals. He's very, very driven by an aesthetic, what something should look like. Something happens, and we get this. Something happens, and we get this. I'll give you an example. When Bahubali was first being drafted, he had the idea of a woman holding a baby with an arrow in her back. Didn't know who she was, didn't know who the baby was, but that was the visual. And the other visual was her looking up at a 5-kilometer waterfall. So that to that, and the story got woven around there. That story then progressed to originally the people down below seeing the people up top and thinking they're gods, and the people at the top looking down below and thinking they're demons. That was originally, one of the ideas, and that was one of the visuals. The other one was the actual trident formation in the first film. He had the idea for this pincer movement because he'd studied, I think it was Roman war tactics, and this not necessarily was one of them, but they did these kind of formations as a pincer action, but he thought it would be nice to look like it was a big trident from the air. So again, how to weave that into something else. Originally, one of the times when if he hears this, he'll kill me, but screw it. What the original idea was, he had a visual in his head with like 10,000 guys going towards one guy who was on a white horse, traveling out of a city, just like this, just traveling. And then this horse had a pink mane, which would then go down the back. Big wings would come out, and he would plow through them. Again, visual. That, thankfully, went. But it was just a brainstorming session that we did. This was like 2012. This was before this, arrow in the back and all that kind of stuff. So these ideas progressed. They developed, not only by him, but we also suggest ideas. It's like, right, we've got a problem. We've got to get from point A to point B. I don't know how to do it. So, case in point, the catapult. The catapult with the palm trees, the guy standing on it, ding, this thing. My idea was that, okay, use the palm trees, you tie two together, and you use it like a slingshot. So you've got two trees, more power, and that's going to give you the distance that you need. And he went, now let's just stand on them. Like, yeah, right. What? And that's what happened. That was on the set about 48 hours before we shot it. They built the prop, the thing to come down, tie it off, stand on it, chung, chung, chung. That was the process. That's how fast things tend to move with him. Sometimes it's really, really, really developed over time, days, weeks, months, years, in fact. Other times it's like, right, on the spot, how do we get from here to here? Or we have a problem, we need to be able to do this, what do we do? And a lot of us are like, right, okay, we can try this. He'll have his inputs, we'll have our inputs. Possibly he's already got something in the back of his head and he wants the confirmation on it. I'm thinking about this, do you think it'll work? Yeah, I'll do it, yeah. I mean, he came up with a film about a fly, dude. So that was my one phobia. Dealing with flies for 2 years. Anyway.
So mostly you won.
I've got over it now.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Pete.
All right. Thank you very much.